Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The U.S. military says it's carried out strikes on 3 boats in the Caribbean and Pacific, killing at least 11 people, again providing no evidence that the boats were carrying drugs. Since September, the U.S. military has carried out 42 known strikes on small vessels in the waters near Latin America, killing at least 145 people. The recent strikes come weeks after the U.S. attacked Venezuela and abducted its president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, who are to face trial in New York on drugs, weapons, and narco-terrorism charges. The Washington Office on Latin America, an advocacy group, said, quote, "Those being killed by U.S. military strikes at sea are denied any due process whatsoever," unquote. As U.S. and Iranian officials held negotiations over Iran's nuclear program in Geneva, Switzerland, Tuesday, Iran temporarily closed parts of the Strait of Hormuz, a key international waterway through which 20% of the world's oil passes. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned, quote, "The strongest army in the world might sometimes receive such a slap that it cannot get back on its feet," unquote. Tehran's foreign minister cautioned more work still needs to be done in reaching a nuclear deal, but expressed some optimism about the negotiations.
I can say that in this round, there were quite serious discussions and a more constructive atmosphere than in the previous round. Various ideas were raised, and these ideas were seriously discussed, and finally we were able to reach a general agreement on a series of guiding principles. From now on, we will move based on those principles and enter into the text of a possible agreement.
Meanwhile, Mehdi Mahmoudyan, the Oscar-nominated co-writer of the film It Was Just an Accident, has been released from an Iranian prison. Earlier this month, he was arrested in Tehran after he signed a statement condemning Khamenei and the regime's violent crackdown on anti-government demonstrators. To see our interview with the filmmaker, Jafar Panahi, go to democracynow.org. Peru's Congress has impeached interim Peruvian President José Herri for failing to disclose meetings with Chinese businessmen who are under investigation. His ouster came just about 4 months after taking office. He's the former head of Peru's Congress who also oversaw the removal of his predecessor, Dina Boluarte. Herri is the 6th Peruvian president in the past decade to leave office before the end of a term. Residents of the capital, Lima, took to the streets to celebrate his impeachment.
Very good. Long live Peru. We're always standing, never kneeling. Now I tell my suffering people which have been subjected to thousands of forms of slavery, never again, not one more vote to these far-right parties. We will not trust them at all because they've proven their immorality and incapacity.
Peru is scheduled to hold a general election on April 12th. Here in the United States, a federal judge has blocked efforts by the Trump administration to rearrest Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland father, who was wrongfully sent to El Salvador's notorious Secat mega prison last March. Since his return to the United States in June, Abrego Garcia has been fighting repeated deportation threats as DHS has intended to send him to several African countries he has no ties to. U.S. District Judge Paula Zinnes said in a ruling Tuesday the Trump administration, quote, made one empty threat after another to remove him to countries in Africa with no real chance of success. There's no good reason to believe removal is likely in the reasonably foreseeable future, she said. Abrego Garcia's legal team has said he had agreed to the possibility of being removed to Costa Rica, but Judge Zinnes blasted the Trump administration for, quote, purposely and for no reason ignored the one country that has consistently offered to accept Abrego Garcia as a refugee and to which he agrees to go, unquote. To see all our coverage of Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case, go to democracynow.org. In more related immigration news, an immigration judge has blocked the Trump administration from deporting Mohsen Madawi, a graduate of Columbia University who was detained last April over his outspoken support for Palestinian rights. Madawi is a green card holder from the occupied West Bank. He was arrested by ICE in Vermont when he appeared for what he was told would be a U.S. citizenship interview. He spent more than 2 weeks in ICE custody. After news of his deportation proceedings had been terminated, Madawi said in a statement, quote, "In a climate where dissent is increasingly met with intimidation and detention, today's ruling renews hope that due process still applies and that no agency stands above the Constitution. This is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a deeper commitment to peace, dignity, and justice," he said. To see our interviews with Mohsen Madawi, go to democracynow.org. Department of Homeland Security spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin, one of the most vocal supporters of President Trump's immigration crackdown and deportation campaign, is resigning. The move comes amidst intensifying scrutiny over DHS's use of deadly force and public backlash against President Trump's deployment of federal agents to Chicago, Minneapolis, and other cities nationwide. Earlier this year, Public Citizen reported McLaughlin's husband's company, the Strategy Group, was granted part of a $220 million contract to run an anti-immigration advertising campaign for DHS. ProPublica also reported last year McLaughlin's husband, Ben Yoho, worked on one of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's ads filmed at Mount Rushmore. This comes as calls grow for Noem's impeachment and resignation. Following news of McLaughlin's departure, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said on social media, quote, "Another MAGA extremist forced out of DHS. Noem next. Keep the pressure on," he said. A 2-month-old baby, Juan Nicolas, who became gravely ill while detained at ICE's South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, has been deported, along with his parents and 16-month-old sibling. That's according to Texas Congressmember Joaquin Castro, who had demanded the baby's release after news he'd been rushed to the hospital Monday. Baby Juan had reportedly been detained at the Dilley jail for about a month. Univision reporter Lydia Terrazas had spoken to Juan's mom, who told her the baby had suffered a health episode choking on his own vomit. When he was taken to Dilley's medical area, guards were told there was no doctor available inside the jail at that time. In Bangladesh, the country's new prime minister, Tariq Rahman, was sworn in Tuesday after his party's landslide win in parliamentary elections. Rahman returned to Bangladesh last year after 17 years of self-imposed exile in the United Kingdom. Voters also approved a raft of changes to Bangladesh's constitution aimed at preventing authoritarianism. This comes after Bangladesh's former prime minister, Sheikh Hasina, was sentenced to death for ordering a deadly crackdown on student protesters who successfully toppled her government in 2024. The UN reports 1,400 people were killed and thousands were injured in the crackdown. In Minnesota, independent journalist Georgia Ford and activist Treherne Cruz pleaded not guilty in federal court in St. Paul yesterday. They were indicted on federal charges in connection with the protests last month at a St. Paul church where the pastor is also an ICE official. Don Lemon also pleaded not guilty, along with 4 others, including protest leader and civil rights attorney Nakima Levy-Armstrong. This is Georgia Ford speaking to supporters gathered outside the federal courthouse in St. Paul Tuesday. She called attention to the attacks on journalists in the United States and around the world.
This is a global crisis. According to Al Jazeera, more than 250 journalists and members of the media have been killed in Gaza, and most people don't even know about it. We live in a time when AI images and AI videos are shaping our world's reality, with a portion of our society living in delusion. So if you stand for truth, I need you to stand up today.
And Late Show host Stephen Colbert is accusing the Trump administration and CBS of censorship after the network informed The Late Show according to Colbert, that he could not air an interview with James Tallarico, a Texas Democrat running for Senate. CBS said in a statement, quote, "The Late Show was not prohibited by CBS from broadcasting the interview with Texas State Representative James Tallarico. The show was provided legal guidance that the broadcast could trigger the Federal Communication Commission's equal time rule for two other candidates, including Representative Jasmine Crockett, and presented options for how the equal time for other candidates could be fulfilled," unquote. The FCC had previously issued an exemption for the equal time rule for news interviews, but earlier this year, FCC Chair Brendan Carr mentioned he was considering dropping the exemption specifically for talk shows. Earlier this month, the FCC opened an investigation into the ABC show The View, which also interviewed Tallarico. Colbert's interview with Tallarico was ultimately posted on YouTube outside the jurisdiction of the FCC. It garnered 5 million views. This is Stephen Colbert last night, insisting CBS barred him from conducting his interview with Tallarico live on The Late Show broadcast.
Between the monologue I did last night and before I did the second act talking about this issue, I had to go backstage. I got called backstage to get more notes from these lawyers, something that had never, ever happened before. And they told us the language they wanted me to use to describe that equal time exception. And I used that language. So I don't know what this is about.
CBS is currently owned by Paramount's Skydance, run by Trump ally David Ellison, the son of Oracle founder Larry Ellison, who's repeatedly visited the White House during President Trump's second term. Paramount has restarted talks with Warner Brothers Discovery to acquire the company after Warner Brothers previously rejected Paramount's hostile takeover bid last year. The takeover would require the approval of Trump's FCC. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York with Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.